You clicked this video to understand overthinking, but part of you may already be overthinking why you clicked it. Maybe you're wondering if this says something about you. Maybe you're deciding whether this is going to be useful, too dramatic, too familiar, or weirdly personal. And now, because I pointed it out, you're probably thinking about the fact that you're thinking about it. So yeah, this one is probably for you. Overthinking gets treated like a personality flaw by people whose brains apparently come with a working off switch. They'll say things like, just relax, as if your mind was waiting for that groundbreaking piece of software update. But overthinking usually isn't stupidity, weakness, or drama. More often, it's a mental skill that became overworked, a feature that got stuck in the on position. And the strange part is, it probably started because it helped. The brain has systems involved in self-reflection, memory, imagination, and thinking about other people's minds. One of the networks often discussed in this context is called the default mode network, which tends to become active when you're not focused on an outside task. It's part of how you replay the past, imagine the future, understand yourself, and mentally simulate social situations. That's not useless. In fact, it's impressive. The same kind of inward mental simulation can support empathy, creativity, planning, and the ability to notice things other people miss. The problem isn't that your brain thinks deeply. The problem is that sometimes it doesn't know when to clock out. It stays late, turns the lights back on, opens 6 emotional spreadsheets, and starts investigating a facial expression from 3 days ago. There's a difference between reflection and rumination. Reflection moves somewhere. It helps you understand, decide, repair, or learn. Rumination just circles. It gives you the feeling of doing something while quietly returning you to the same emotional room again and again. One is thinking through a problem. The other is holding a courtroom trial in your head where no one ever reaches a verdict, but somehow you're still found guilty every time, and yet the mind keeps doing it because it makes a quiet promise. It tells you that if you just think about this long enough, you'll finally find the safe version of the story, the perfect explanation, the perfect response, the exact sentence you should have said at that dinner party in 2019 when someone looked at you slightly weird and your soul quietly left the room. Overthinking feels like preparation. Sometimes it is, but often, it's fear wearing the clothes of preparation. For a lot of people, this didn't begin as anxiety. It began as attentiveness. Maybe you grew up in a home, school, or social environment where reading the room mattered, where someone's mood could change the entire atmosphere, where noticing small shifts helped you avoid conflict, disappointment, criticism, or rejection. So your brain learned to scan, not because it was broken, but because it was trying to protect you. It learned that if you could predict what might happen, maybe you could stay safe. Maybe you could be less wrong, less annoying, less disappointing, less in the way. That was adaptive once, smart even. But now you're older and the threat isn't always there anymore. You're not in that same room. You're not waiting for the same reaction. And still, the system keeps running. Old software on a new machine. This is why social situations can become so exhausting. You're not just having a conversation. You're watching yourself have the conversation. You're speaking, listening, monitoring tone, checking facial expressions, predicting how you're being perceived, and preparing a post-event analysis for later, apparently because your brain thinks every casual interaction needs a performance review. You leave the conversation, but the conversation does not leave you. You replay the joke. You examine the pause. You wonder if your goodbye sounded too cold, too eager, too awkward, too something. And the most frustrating part is that nobody else may have noticed anything. They went home and made pasta. You went home and opened a mental investigation. Think about texting someone something ordinary. You write, "No worries, we can do another day." Simple, harmless. Then you read it back and wonder if "no worries" sounds passive-aggressive, so you add an exclamation mark. Then 2. Then you remove 1 because now it feels emotionally unstable. Then the 3 little typing dots appear. They disappear. They come back. In those 40 seconds, you quietly write an entire psychological thriller. Maybe they're annoyed. Maybe they're showing the message to someone. Maybe they're crafting a careful response because you've damaged the relationship permanently. Maybe this is how it ends. And then their reply comes in. Sounds good. The dots were not a verdict. They were choosing an emoji. You had a full emotional weather event. They were deciding between a smiley face and a thumbs up. Because if a friend came to you with the exact same spiral, you would be kind. You would say, they probably didn't mean it that way. You would remind them they're human. You would not recommend a 6-hour forensic analysis of punctuation. But when it's you, the rules change. You give other people context. You give yourself cross-examination. You give other people softness. You give yourself evidence. That gap between how you treat people you love and how you treat yourself is where a lot of overthinking becomes suffering. And telling yourself to stop thinking about it usually doesn't help. Psychologist Daniel Wegner showed this clearly in his famous white bear experiment. When people were told not to think about a white bear, the thought became harder to suppress. The more the mind tries to ban something, the more it checks whether the ban is working, which, unfortunately, means it has to keep bringing the thing back up. So when you try to force overthinking away, your brain may interpret that as another task to monitor. Are we not thinking about it? How about now? Still not thinking about it? Great. Here it is again, just to check. The mind doesn't respond well to prohibition. It often responds better to curiosity, because if you follow overthinking back to its root, it usually points towards something you care about. You replay the conversation because connection matters. You rehearse the presentation because competence matters. You worry about being misunderstood because being seen accurately matters. The anxiety may be communicating badly, but it is not random. It knows where you are, tender. That's why overthinking gets louder when life gets quiet. When the phone is down, the room is still, and there's no task to hide inside, the backlog walks in like it had an appointment. Stillness removes the distraction that was managing the noise. So you stay busy, you scroll. You work, you consume, not always because you enjoy it, but because silence gives the mind too much space to start holding meetings. So maybe the better question isn't, how do I stop overthinking? Maybe the better question is, what is this thought trying to protect me from? Is it protecting you from rejection? From embarrassment? From being blamed? From becoming the kind of person someone once made you feel like you were? And does that danger still exist here now, in this moment? Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. Often what remains is a very practiced alarm system reacting to an old kind of fire. The goal isn't to become someone who never thinks deeply. That probably isn't you, and honestly, it doesn't need to be. The goal is to stop letting every thought become a command. To notice the spiral and say, I understand why you're here, I know what you're trying to do, but you don't get to take the whole evening. That's not instantly peaceful, but it is powerful, because healing doesn't always mean silence. Sometimes it just means finally becoming the person in the room who gets to decide how much volume the thoughts deserve. And if this felt a little too accurate, there's probably more on this channel that will too. Subscribe if you want to keep going. Slowly, carefully, and maybe only after thinking it over a few times first.